You know, one of the main things that I actually can appreciate about the human existence is the fact that we are all different individuals. We all have our own way of thinking, our own way of just actually doing things, our own way of just actually, I guess, responding to the environment. And sometimes because of our differences, it can be something that can help us, and it can also be something that can hinder us. It can be something that people like, and it can be also something that people don't like, depending on how we actually respond to the environment around us. you know the same thing goes with how we think. We have a lot of people that actually take things and accept things at face value, and we also have people that actually, kind of sit there and kind of ponder things a little bit, and kind of just analyze and really think things through, without just actually jumping, I guess, to the first thought, or actually just being able to readily accept what someone tells them. And one thing about it is that I would have to say I'm very, in a sense, analytical. And being analytical is not actually really a bad thing. I mean, it depends. I mean, because being analytical, I've received, criticism here on YouTube because of that, and I've received praise as well. But even in the criticism and the praises, I still want to remain, a critical thinker. Because when you're a critical thinker, really, it lets the folks know that you're not going to accept anything at face value. You're going to really sit there and weigh the pros and cons and really look deeper into something to really see what's really going on, as opposed to what other folks want you to think. And one thing I can also say about myself as well is that I don't actually like folks, or I'm not bullied into actually wanting to, or actually forced into thinking the way other folks want me to think. I've never been that way. Well, maybe at one point in time I used to be, because I actually was gullible and wanted to be liked. But now that I'm actually a little more mature and can really think a little bit better and a little more, with a clear picture, I don't actually like to go along with what everybody else thinks, because there's always some an opposing view, or something else that's seen that, or actually that's visible, that other folks may not actually want to see, but it's there. We know, as we hear here, the academies are coming out, very soon here, and they're actually going to be doing nominations for different pictures and everything like that. And we have like a lot of African American men and women, I guess, that are actually on the nominations list, I guess, to be nominated for different types of awards and such. And like I say, I don't really pay too much attention to these type of announcements. I mean, even though it's the buzz on YouTube, it caught my eye, because with this particular year's nominations and everything, there's a lot of things that's actually going on here that I think that really needs to be discussed, and really needs to be, I guess, kind of analyzed, or examined, I should say. We have a lot of different, pictures and stuff that are up for nominations and such, that deals with slavery, and such like that. And the issue with it is that, I really, when you're talking about, movies that deals with, the African American struggle, the enslavement of black folks, it's not really, it's a very, in a sense, a very touchy subject, or it can be to some folks. And that is a part of our history that we actually really we don't want to ignore it, because we know that it existed, but we don't actually want it to constantly keep being thrown in our face as if that's all who we are. And see, one thing about it is that we have a lot of actually movies that's actually being nominated in this year's, I guess, categories, nominee categories or whatnot, that's actually, I guess, that are being nominated for a Golden Globe, that depicts, slavery and such, and how, blacks were treated, and, the harsh treatment, and such like that. And for the most part, the people who they're nominating, they're happy and everything like that, as well as they should be. But the issue that I actually have with this thing is that we are already used, and I speak, allegorically, for the most part, the black community is already used to actually being thrown, or actually being exploited by white folks. I mean, I'm not saying that that statement doesn't mean that I'm racist. I'm being a realist. I'm being realistic, okay? So again, if my words are harsh, then I would suggest that you don't listen any further. But the issue is that it's a double insult when you actually have your own kind throwing you under the bus, just for the sake of making a quick buck. And I think I can summarize, and I think that's my synopsis of pretty much the nominations of all of these black films that were actually recently produced and nominated for some sort of an award this year, for the Academy Awards. We have this particular movie here, 12 Years a Slave, that was done And like I said, for the most part, I don't really like to look at those type of things because, again, all it does is depicts what we're actually trying to grow away from as black folks. Okay, and the thing about it is that it's hard to really separate yourself and be seen as a, capable individual, but every time you're actually reminded about where you came from and such like that, it kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth because pretty much you're not being seen as actually being equal. You're not being seen as being capable. And I think for the most part, the people who actually produces these films like this really, in a sense, I don't think that they're actually really thinking clearly, or really they're not really putting the best interest of African Americans to the forefront. The most insulting part about this entire process is that, the fellow who actually directed the film, Steve McQueen, I mean, it's like, okay, you're an African American yourself, and I understand, I guess he meant well, I guess, with the production of that movie, but the fact about it is that, again, in my opinion, you're kind of he's throwing folks under the bus just for the sake of actually wanting to, I guess, portray or actually deliver something that will make him a superstar. Again, it's the funny thing about it, again, you had, like, again, the preface of the film and such, where it depicts the raw, uncut treatment of African Americans who were enslaved for the most part. And the sad part about it, is that America actually likes this type of thing. Society likes this because, again, it's depicting us as actually being helpless, being under someone else's foot, and actually not having any control or any type of, way of actually maintaining ourselves for the most part. And the thing about it, again, is that, the people who they nominated, I can't think of this fellow's name because it's a long, name or what have you. But, I mean, he was nominated for a nomination for it, I guess, as Best Actor or something like that for this particular film. But it's like, it's a shame that African Americans actually have to be, nominated for things like this. Portrayed as actually being, down and out. Being able to, deliver such excellent performance for actually being under someone's foot. And to me, that's an insult because, again, that does not actually, I guess, allow society to see that we as black folks actually have progressed greatly from slavery or the enslavement of African Americans. And the thing about it, again, is that the more that these particular producers make these types of films, society is going to continue to have that particular mind frame of slavery in the back of their heads, especially when they're in their personal corners, thinking about what they really think about black folk. These type of films really does not really add to the edification or the building up of our community. The only thing that is doing is actually just keeping us back in yesteryear, in self-pity. And I refuse to actually go back to that particular time frame because, number one, I wasn't born during that era. But for those who actually did survive, and really can think clearly and see what's going on, they would tell these producers that they need to really stop making these type of films because really it's actually it's like it's pulling us far back than moving us forward. Now, when I looked at this, and again, when I immediately saw, 12 Years of a Slave, or I heard of the movie, I actually also had a flashback of that movie. I don't know if you all remember, that's called The Help. And like I said, when I looked at the movie and I said, okay, where I see a link here, and the thing about it is that what I'm seeing here, the correlation that I see between the two is not good. I mean, because, again, you're actually being able, you're transforming and actually telling America that the best that an African American can do, both man and woman in Hollywood, is to portray as being under someone else's foot, being a maid, being, a second-class citizen. And see, one thing about it, again, is that Hollywood has actually begun to adopt this particular behavior, and the fact about it is that the folks who are actually nominated for these type of awards from the shows are actually buddy and laughing along with the people who are trying to portray them as being second-class citizens. And to me, that is an insult. That is, just pure debauchery. I don't care what anybody says. And shame on those African Americans who really do not see this for what it actually is. I'm not saying that white folks are the enemy or anything like that, because, again, I have to love them just like I love my fellow black. But you have to be able to spot when you're being used. And the sad part in this particular case is that you're being used and really being, I guess, taken by your own kind. Now, when you're talking about, again, that movie that they call The Butler, I did a little research with, Lee Daniels and everything like that. And, for the most part, he is actually, I guess, he likes to portray black folks as actually I guess, in unattractive situations, whether it be, I guess, in a state of actually being subservient to someone, or whether you're actually being seen, or actually being produced as actually bringing life of an African American person to the forefront, like he actually did in the movie that's called Precious. And the sad part about it is that in these particular movies, and such like that, again, African Americans, are not really, in my opinion, are being portrayed to be the upstanding citizens that they are. Again, we're still being recycled, or I would say our presence in today's society, it seems to be soured, because even though you may have a lot of people that may go on different websites and everything like that, and may sit there and say all these different type of things, oh, it's a great movie and everything like this, they portrayed this to be the best thing there is, accurate portrayal, you best believe that in the back of their minds, they are justified in everything that they think of for the typical African American. Despite the fact that they say that the movies are riveting and everything like this, you better believe and know that in their secret corner somewhere in this world, somewhere in the United States, they're saying, you know what, I'm right in everything that I said, and I'm justified in my attitudes towards African Americans. And like I say, a lot of these black producers just don't see it. They're doing more harm than good to the African American makeup. And the sad part about it, again, is that they're being used. You're sitting up there getting, an award, an Academy Award, for actually being a maid, or being a butler, or being portrayed as a helpless slave. To me, that's being thrown under the bus by your own kind. And the sad part about it is that it is by your own kind. And just because it's not a white person, that doesn't mean that a black person can't be your worst enemy as well. But you know what? I came up with my own type of theories as to why I think that we have a lot of these African American movies now that are actually being done, where they're actually portraying African Americans to be subservient, or to be under someone's foot. Because my first thing about it is the obvious. It's the obvious. It's money is going to always be it's going to always be the ruling authority. People actually lose their minds. They will produce anything. They will produce first class trash just for the sake of actually kind of making it appeal to society. And they have their different ways of dressing it up to sit there and say that it's okay, and this, that, and the other. It's okay to exploit. It's okay to exaggerate a little bit because it'll bring in more money. And money, like I say, sometimes it's, it rules people and it brings out the worst in people. Even in their thinking, it brings out the worst. The second part, I think, is that, they're thinking along the lines that white folks have been exploiting blacks all these years, why not, why can't I do it? And the sad part about it, again, is just that you may never actually hear a black person or a black producer come out and say it, in that particular way. But again, thinking analytically, you have to really sit there and say, okay, you know what? Maybe they are thinking that way. Because, look at the material that they're releasing to these theaters, and pretty much, and it's like, it breaks my heart, because basically, it's like, I don't know, what are you trying to profit? Who are you trying to please? And which brings to my last point here, is that they want to be seen as being, equal. And, and they'll do whatever they can to be as equal to the white person as possible, and it doesn't matter whose reputation that they're going to destroy in the process. Yeah, we have all of the accolades and all the clappings of the hands and everything, great movie and everything like that. But after all of the clappings are done and all of the raves and everything and the 2 thumbs up and all this type of stuff, we have to deal with reality. And I think pretty much what the best way to actually, I guess, deal with this particular situation is that, when Tyler Perry actually did that movie, The Temptation. Now, see, one thing about it, what I will say about Tyler Perry, for the most part, is that he's very talented, and he's able to actually be very creative when need be, and really he's able to really take things and really touch the African American community. And see, one thing about it is that in this particular one, he actually touched a lot of things, and he actually brought I guess, a spotlight on, relationships, being promiscuous, cheating on husbands, wives, and all this type of stuff, and of course the HIV virus, which of course that young lady actually got from when she was actually having an affair with one of her clients, from her firm. And the sad part about it, again, is that, it touched on a lot of issues that's going on in the black community, and a lot of people may look at Tyler Perry and say that he exploited the black community for that too, because I mean that pretty much, you know, was a good movie. But as well, you know, you got to understand he also received a lot of criticisms for that one, as you know, for that movie as well, you know, saying that, you know, that black people should not be the new face of HIV. But in that movie, for the most part, he actually portrayed it to actually tell the black community that this is what's going on in a lot of your households, and this is the outcome, whether you want to relieve it or not. See, one thing about it, again, is that I think what separates Tyler Perry from all these other producers of these films is that he's actually able to, again, touch the black perspective from a very human standpoint. That's not to take away from what the other folks are doing with their slavery movies and such like that. But see, one thing about is that in this particular movie, he did not actually produce this movie where anybody was subservient to anybody. The fact about it is that he actually delivered a message that was clean, clear, and well understood in the black community, that this disease is taking over our community. And it's actually becoming an epidemic because we have people that are not wanting to be happy with their mates. They're wanting to go around and sleep around, you know, and all this careless behavior. And next thing you know, the grass was not as green on the other side as once thought. But see, one thing about it, again, he's very talented in actually being able to deliver these messages without really so much insulting folks, but it's more like an eye-opener. Again, he didn't insult anyone. He did not, you know, say, okay, well, you'll never be this, that, and the other. Because again, in this movie, he actually portrayed these people, this young girl, to be, you know, an upstanding citizen, you know, actually able to join a firm, you know, and do her thing, make big bucks or whatever the case may be. She was not actually being portrayed as being subservient to anyone. But again, a message was made, and it was clear and loudly heard. Even though you did have some people that actually did not like the movie, they actually wanted to kind of kick against the prick, so to speak, to say that, you know, the movie was pretty much an exploitation of blacks and such like that. But again, to each his own. But what we have to understand is that we got to kind of pay attention to what is really going on to the movies that are actually being made, where the majority of the cast are African Americans, and where the movie is actually being produced by a black person. Because these days, it's like they're recycling us. It's like they're putting our accomplishments, our goals, our hopes, our dreams, it's like they're recycling it all the way back to the slave era. And pretty much in the slave era, you know, there was no love. There was, all it was about was just plain survival, you know, escaping persecution. And see, one thing about it, again, is that I wish that more people would actually speak on this particular issue and really see the trend that's going on with these type of films that's coming up, and that are being produced every day, you know, in movie and being played in cinemas across the United States. You know, it's not portraying black folks to actually be able to, I guess, to attain higher levels of, you know, things in society. It's not portraying them to actually be able to show them as upstanding citizens. It's always actually being portraying, for the most part, them as being quote unquote ghetto, and not really being able to hold conversations, not even being able to be classy. And the sad part about it is that as long as a black person gets nominated for being foolish, it's all okay. But in my book, it's not okay. Folks, this is not a presentation to actually, I guess, talk about or actually belittle the accomplishments of black folks, but this is my chance to actually sit there and really ask for the black folks of America to really think, and think critically about what's going on and how society is changing us for the worse instead of the better. All right? Peace out.